Whether you're a diehard sports fan, a hopeless romantic, or a comedy aficionado, the Xfinity 10G network was made for streaming it all. Worry less about buffering when streaming your favorite shows, movies, or live sports, and enjoy a better way to watch. Xfinity gives you a reliable connection for streaming, plus all the entertainment you love all in one place. Fear not, because now you can finally sit back, relax, and stream your favorite entertainment and sports like never before with the Xfinity 10G network.
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at DiscountTire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
To get the Crime Writers on Aftershow right now, go to patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
This episode is sponsored by The Score, Bank Robber Diaries from Acast Studios and Western Sound. It's a brand new podcast. It's a true crime told from the criminal's point of view. Get up close and personal with a real bank robber named Joe Loya, who robbed 50 banks.
Oh, that's a lot.
Follow his life's arc from being an abused kid to a petty criminal to a con, an ex-con, a writer, and a father, and finally a reconciled son, and learn some trade secrets along the way. Search for The Score, Bank Robber Diaries in your favorite podcast app, and check out the first episode, which is out right now, today. Hit subscribe so you don't miss new episodes. I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And this week, we are on the hunt for a killer who walked away from prison and has been on the run for 40 years. From ABC Audio, it's Have You Seen This Man? Then twin brothers confront a secret from their past that only one of them can remember. We'll talk about Netflix's Tell Me Who I Am. Joining me to get that done and even more is my real-life husband and true crime co-author and Al to my Betty, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, my loyal subjects. Welcome to you all. Welcome to you all.
Are you doing your Queen impression, getting
That's
ready
right.
for the...
It's Monday morning last night. The crown dropped,
Yes.
so to speak.
And will we have watched the whole thing by the time this podcast comes out? Probably.
Yeah.
A new season dropped?
Yeah, it's coming out. Yes, it's out.
Oh my God. I'm so excited. Oh, wow.
Laura's like, talk faster.
I'm going to go watch it all tonight. I'm
Laura,
not even asleep.
to be fair, it hasn't come out tonight, technically. By the time this podcast drops, it will have come out.
Okay.
This is Wednesday. I believe it comes out Friday, right, Kevin?
Yeah. Rebecca always sort of fails to grasp the idea of intimacy and immediacy in podcasting and loves to remind people how we taped this so long ago.
It takes a long time to edit this podcast, Kevin. I think people think that we're just doing it live to tape. We're not that good.
Just live in their world for a minute. It's Monday morning.
Also with us,
commute.
Also with us is journalist, true crime author, former defense investigator, licensed private investigator, and certified cat lady, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Rebecca.
And finally, our resident critic, the author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy, and our Patreon book club host, Toby Ball. Hello, Toby.
Aloha, Rebecca.
All right, before we start the show this week, something alarming happened on social media this week.
What?
Laura Bricker, hearkening back to last week's episode where I talked to Patient Zero host Taylor Quimby about Watchmen, and then we were talking a little bit about Patient Zero and what a great podcast that is. And then in response to that conversation, Laura Bricker shared on our social media a picture of maybe the worst tick bite I have ever seen on a human being. Laura Bricker, do you have Lyme disease? What is going on with you?
I don't. So I don't know if I shared it on social media, but I will. I'm fine with everybody seeing my giant tick bite. I think I sent it on Slack.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
To you guys. But it's okay because, so I woke up last Wednesday morning. I rolled over. I'm like, God, something's on my stomach. And I was like, oh, it's a tick. And I pulled it off and I had this huge, crazy reaction on my side. I totally panicked. I went to the walk-in clinic to get the life-saving doxycycline, which is what they give you. And then I sent my tick out to get tested at the University of Massachusetts Amherst because they have a lab there and you can send your tick right in. And it was, in fact, a deer tick, which is the disease-carrying tick.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know who just gasped. Toby. Oh my God. Yeah.
I gasped.
So, so it says species, black-legged deer tick, sex, female, feeding state, partially fed.
Ooh.
That's what it said.
It could have fed on someone else.
And then they give you the tests like I did. Thankfully, all my tests were negative. So it doesn't have Lyme. It doesn't have hard tick relapsing fever, whatever that is. Some other thing I've never heard of and some other things I've never heard of. But they tested for everything. So I was thankful it was all negative. But it was it's still this big giant thing on my side. So sometimes now I just lift my shirt up and show people because I'm like, holy shit, you're not going to believe this big tick bite I got. It's crazy. And Fireman Ken had no sympathy for this. He's like, let's go get dinner. It could be your last supper. Right. And I'm like, true. Thanks a lot.
Also, Laura Bricker, I don't know if you've actually listened to Patient Zero, but Kevin, you have, right?
Yeah.
How about those tests that Laura Bricker had?
Are they bad?
They might actually be bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this. You might not be out of the woods, Laura Bricker, but we'll be with you. We'll be there with you for whatever happens.
Okay.
And Taylor himself had Lyme disease, and he's fine now. He's fine.
Okay. So what's the wrong with the test? Now I need to know.
Listen to the podcast, and then you can report back to us.
So to summarize, the crown is out, and Laura got bit by a tick.
And also tonight, I won at Family Feud during my monthly Parrot Head meetup. So that
Congratulations, Laura Bricker.
We're thrilled.
Toby, do you have any exciting life updates to share with us? Were you bitten by any insects, or did you win any random contests?
No, I went to a Celtics game. That was pretty fun.
Ooh, that is fun. Did they win?
They did.
Ooh, very exciting.
We had really good seats. It was for my nephew's birthday. I went with my son and my brother-in-law and my nephew.
Bunch of boys watching basketball.
I was the only person under 6'3" in our group. And yeah, so it was fun. And I'm trying to think if there's any other exciting news. And I think the answer is no.
Well, this would be a good time to mention that our listeners should subscribe to our Patreon, right, Kevin? That's a natural segue. Tonight on the Crime Writers on After Show, we're going to be talking about Laura Brickers being assigned security detail for Mayor Pete Buttigieg, presidential candidate, and how that worked out. We're also going to be talking about Laura's trip to Key West and all of the dead people she met there. And we're also going to be talking about an incredible, unprecedented, don't spoil it, guys, listener email we received from a famous person that was in one of the podcasts we reviewed. And Kevin, do you just want to tease a line so our listeners know what they'll be getting when they check into the after show this evening?
Not saying who it is, but this could be a good clue. One of the things I have found most frustrating in all the coverage of what went down between us is that people refer to it as a feud. Sorry, Toby.
I'm glad it wasn't, I wrote, I'll always love you, motherfucker.
I will say the episode of Dolly Parton's America that dropped this week, that's the latest one out, is so good. Toby may not like it, but the rest of you guys will love it. You should check it. Dolitix. Super duper good. But yes, no, it was not Dolly Parton, but it was somebody good who was a character, a major character in one of the podcasts we reviewed. And thankfully, I think it was a podcast we gave 4 thumbs up to, right?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, are you guys ready to start the podcast now?
Yes, we are.
Let's do it.
There was a murder in central Ohio that many people still don't want to talk about. The man who committed that crime once sat on death row, but now he's on the run. His name is Lester Eubanks.
ABC Audio's new podcast goes on the manhunt for a former death row convict who escaped from an Ohio prison in 1973. Lester Eubanks had been sentenced for the electric chair for murdering 14-year-old Mary Ellen Diener in 1965. But a Supreme Court commutation and a permissive prison rehabilitation program allowed the convict to go on a Christmas shopping outing from which he walked away.
Lester didn't tunnel out of prison or scale a stone wall. On a December morning in 1973, he and a small group of inmates were granted permission to walk outside prison walls. His handcuffs were taken off. He changed into civilian clothing, and he and 3 others were driven to a local mall.
Hosted by The View's Sunny Hostin and reported by ABC News senior investigative reporter Matthew Mosk, the podcast follows U.S. Marshals still hunting Eubanks, tracking his 45 years in hiding. Now we will be talking about spoilers and plot points through the first 5 episodes of Have You Seen This Man? To skip that part of the discussion, you can just go ahead to our thumbs up or thumbs down review. All right, Kevin, this podcast is another podcast that we've listened to that has this format where it's like a dual host format. There's like the skin host that just does the intros and then the actual host who's doing the reporting. What do you think of this format and why do they keep doing this to us, these podcasting companies?
I can only guess, but I do notice that it's labeled as season 1. And I'm thinking that Matthew Mosk put in so much time reporting this, he probably hasn't also spent another 2 years doing season 2. So, Sunny seems to be the host that'll probably be introducing every season. And the actual, on-the-ground reporters who have been chasing the story will probably do most of the heavy lifting as they have been doing in this season.
But you do have a comment also about Matthew Mosk's vocal style in the podcast, which I would describe as laid back, regular. He almost sounds like a public radio person, right?
So Lester Eubanks grew up in Mansfield, Ohio, which is a town of 46,000 people. It sits almost exactly between Cleveland and Columbus, right in the middle. And that's sort of how the town feels, like a middle child. Not a small town, not a big city either.
Yeah, and of course, I'm winking that we would never talk about this for women because it's sexist, but I can talk about it for a guy.
We should talk about it for men on purpose because it's not sexist.
I would say that Matthew doesn't have a traditional voice for radio, and I can say that as somebody who was told that by radio people that I work for.
Yeah.
And I don't have a voice. Yeah, that was great. Thanks for that 12 years of anxiety, but whatever. Eat a dick. I've got my own podcast now.
Wow. Oh, my God.
It's all coming out.
Kevin, I just want to remind you again, the In the Dark team listens to our show, and they just heard you say eat a dick. FYI.
Well, I'm sure they're clutching their pearls. But Matthew, look, he's got a very natural delivery. It doesn't ever sound like he's reading anything. And he interacts very well with all the people that he's talking about. So sort of that raw tape of him just talking to people works without a lot of editing because it's just very natural. I think it was definitely a good pick for this assignment.
Toby says, this clearly seems like a podcast made by television people. What do you mean by that, Toby?
I probably shouldn't have used the word clearly.
Clearly.
I kind of felt like it was the soundtrack to something that I should be looking at pictures for.
Yes.
And then when they were segueing out of things, when we get back, we'll go to Marshall What's-His-Face. Yeah, so I don't know. That was just the way it kind of came off to me. Like when I was listening to it, it did kind of have that network TV feel to it. Some of it was the segues probably. Some of it was, like, I wasn't too focused on this until the very end, but I don't know how much sort of scene setting they do through the storytelling part. Like, again, as though you might have a chance to, like, see footage or a photo or something.
Right. Now, Laura, I want to talk about really the incredibly horrific nature of this crime that Lester Eubanks was convicted for. This 1965 murder, it was like, a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And he attempted to sexually assault her and shot her twice and then returned later and smashed her head in with a brick. And I'm not saying any of this to be sensational. I'm saying it because it comes into play later in the story. Like, this is the crime for which he was convicted. And seems to be no disputing that he did it. Even his family is like, oh, no, we don't think he's not guilty. Like, we know he did it. So can we just talk about that and then just talk about the fact that he got a sentence that, we talked about the death penalty before in the show and it was commuted and that's fine. But the punishment he got and that was supposed to serve did actually fit the crime that he actually did commit, it seems, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is one of those, when you hear the description of this crime, and, it starts off, I don't want to say run of the mill, but the part that really, I think, changes it in terms of making it just so much more egregious is when you hear that he went back, she was still moving, she's moaning. So, instead of going for help or doing something, he smashes her over the head, which is just, when you hear this, you're like, oh my God. And it just, when I listen to this, I'm like, this is like, if you lived in that area, this is probably that crime that everybody knows about, that everybody still remembers, even though it happened, when was it, like 1965? Just because the details and the nature of what happened to this young girl were just so awful. But that's why when, fast forward, and I'm going to fast forward over the part that I'm going to go crazy over, the Christmas shopping, but fast forward to like his family and all these other people who are just like, no big deal. Yeah, we know what he did. He's here. We know he escaped. No big deal. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, are you kidding me? Like, this wasn't just like you shot him once and they're dead kind of murder. This was like a long, sustained, horrible thing. And, it's definitely something that I think, in that area's history probably ranks up there with one of the worst things that happened. And probably after that, like murders that have happened around me where there's been murders with young children, it's like, they changed the policies at the schools, or like you remember if you were growing up, you were afraid to go to school after this happened. I mean, this is one of those things that really sticks with people.
Now, Toby, you, I know, and we've talked about this in the show before, all of us, like we're all for, criminal justice reform, prison reform, programs, rehabilitative programs in prisons. We talked about that when we discussed Ear Hustle. We've talked about that. We've discussed other podcasts that don't have stories where the criminal justice system is rehabilitative. But we have a situation here now where a guy who committed this crime was able to go to a mall unsupervised. Thoughts, Toby Ball?
No Spencers in prison.
It was a strip mall, so there probably was no Spencers, but I'm just saying.
That's disappointing. So they at least sort of hint at the possibility that people monkeyed around with his records, right? Mm-hmm. To make him eligible for that. So it seems like institutional failure rather than a policy issue. It doesn't seem like there's a policy. Well, even if he's life sentence, if he seems super nice, you can send him off to a mall. That being said, you would think people would know who that was. I mean, it's not like there's that many people on death row. And it seems like somebody should have been like, are we really sending this guy who horribly murdered a 14-year-old to a mall and letting him just run around? It kind of goes back to what Laura was talking about, which is it seems as though, because again, it's sort of hinted that the father who, had some kind of prison ministry thing going might have been able to pull some strings, and that's sort of the family's, circling the wagons, despite what this guy's done, even after one of the brothers, I think, says that, our dad, he was one of those guys, if you messed up, you had to pay the price for it. And it seems like it's the exact opposite in this particular case, at least. It's like he's doing everything he can to prevent his kid from paying the price.
Like, it's bad when I'm listening to this and I'm listening about the guy who did all the prison reforms and stuff. And I'm like I'm on the side of that because the data shows that it works. The data shows that like you reduce recidivism by having programs in prisons. The data shows that like
DT,
get more contact with your family and so forth. In this one guy's case.
No, not just this one guy's case.
No, Rebecca, it's crazy. I was walking around listening to this and I'm like, do. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Did they just say they're taking these people on shopping trips? Did they just say that they take people in the prison and let them go roam around and go home for the weekend and then come back to the prison without anybody supervising them? But the shopping trip thing, I was like, this is like, I mean, you don't do this with middle school kids when you take them on a field trip on the bus. You have a buddy watching them. Like, what the fuck? They're like, hey, we'll see you later. Meet us back here at the appointed hour. Have a nice time. I'm like, how is this even like possible? Like I listened to this and then I like re-listened. I'm like, is this real? Did this really happen? Did somebody really think this was a good idea to just like send people out of the prison? And not just people, like this is somebody who killed somebody.
He was on death row.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is important to underline that. He was on death row a relatively short time before this happened.
Yes. And then they're like, oh, well, now you've been upgraded. Now you can go on a shopping trip. Like, Curtis Flowers couldn't even go to his damn mother's funeral, for crying out loud. I mean, like, what is happening in this world?
I think it was too bad that the warden treated the penitentiary like a halfway house where, certain people could have that kind of freedom. I think that these programs are important because the great majority of people who are incarcerated are going to rejoin us in society. And so that there should be opportunities to give them tools to succeed. Lester Eubanks was never leaving prison. So to extend such a privilege upon him certainly seemed misguided, certainly given, everything else we know. And to the extent of it, like, go ahead and just run off and meet me at 2:00. I mean, I got to think, even like if you had taken a non-Syed to a strip mall and he ran away, I think even Rabi Ashadri would be like, what the fuck did you think?
Yeah.
Right.
Of course that's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
Nonviolent offenders, it's like a different story.
Yeah.
But sending violent offenders out there unsupervised, especially at a place where there's going to be a lot of kids.
So we're all in agreement that that was a dumb thing to do, right? Just so we're all on the record.
Crazy.
That was.
I would like somebody to get on Facebook and make the case for letting him go.
Yeah, he'd always come back from the other Christmas field trips.
I could say I have a bigger question, and I know we're not getting into plot here much by me asking this question. When I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about Lester, I almost felt like I was hearing a story of two different people. So there's the guy who could drag a 14-year-old into an alley, attempt to forcibly rape her, and then shoot her twice, and then come back later after changing his clothes to go dancing and murder her with a brick. And then there's the guy who becomes like an artist in prison and a painter, and then after he escapes, doesn't seem to reoffend.
As far as we know.
Gets a job at a waterbed factory, mentors a young boy, becomes like his second dad and like helps him stay out of trouble. He behaves almost like an innocent person that's been sprung from prison, or at least that's the information we have so far. Doesn't it seem like we're hearing about two separate people in this? Am I the only one who thinks we're hearing about two separate people?
No, I think it's hard to reconcile because that crime that's just so horrific. It's kind of hard to this guy who's like, I mean, his worst offense so far that we've heard about it, he wears like really awful cologne and gives people migraines with it. I mean, But what's going on with that waterbed factory? I just have to say, like, they seem to have a lot of social outings. I was like I'm like listening to this, and she's like, he was never in the pictures, because we went out for this occasion and that occasion. I'm like, there's a lot of camaraderie at that waterbed factory, but he was not involved in that. He didn't speak on the car ride. He just put his like cologne on, went and did his job. But I don't know what it was. I just found that whole sort of dynamic kind of funny.
I just kept thinking of The Office and Angela, who ran the parties, like in The Office, and how they were like always having parties and like always having cakes and always having outings and always having whatever. They're just like paper salespeople.
A waterbed factory? But waterbeds were new, so they couldn't be too
They were all the
picky
rage.
right then.
Kevin had a waterbed in high school, by the way.
I did. Probably put together by Victor.
Probably.
Well, what I think is interesting is, after you escape and you're older and whatnot, your behavior probably does change a little bit more deliberate because unlike when you haven't been arrested yet and you really haven't experienced the consequences, you might be a little more sloppy or you're more aggressive towards people. And so that I definitely can see that if some people were to escape and they were able to logistically live in the world, that they would do so without reoffending.
Well, the data shows that that's true.
Yeah.
When someone reaches their 30s, they don't reoffend.
But somebody who demonstrated sexual predilections and violence towards children, I'm very surprised that person would not reoffend. Now, we know he could have, and he just wasn't caught or whatever. And it wasn't like he robbed a bank.
So you know what Toby's favorite part of the podcast was?
No.
When he calls that woman.
I called and left a message for his sister, Diana Burrows. A few days later, she called back and left this message.
Hi, this is Mrs. Burrows, and I received a call from you requesting an interview about an article that you're going to write about my brother, Lester. And I'm declining an interview, and I would prefer that you never call me again. Thank you.
And that woman says never to contact her again. And then he goes to her house.
Over the summer, I decided to swing by her house to see if she would reconsider, or at least discuss her reasons for not talking in person.
Hello? Hi, are you Mrs. Burrows?
I couldn't get close enough for a full interview.
Yeah, I left you a message.
And I called you and left you a message.
That's her telling me to get off her property and never come back.
Thank you, Mrs. Burrows.
That's Toby's favorite part of the podcast. Toby,
I thought it was hilarious because there was no break. It was like, well, I got in touch with her. She said she wasn't interested and never to call her again. So I went to her house to see if she'd have second thoughts. And she wouldn't open the door, and she told me to go away and never come back. It's like, this is awesome.
So maybe if they spread that over like 15 minutes, came back to it later.
I mean, it's not even a criticism. It's just because, to be quite honest, I didn't find this podcast very interesting, but I thought that gave me a chuckle.
Well, did you appreciate the gumption of the reporter, or did you appreciate the gumption of the witness? It was like pound sand.
It was just like a, don't talk to me again, never come here. So I swung by to see if she still felt that way. It's like, go away. I don't want you here. Okay. Sorry, ma'am.
My favorite part was when he's like, I called you and left you a message. And she's like, I called you and left you a message. And her message was basically like, leave me alone. It actually was very funny.
Well, this is a good time to sort of pivot to this idea about how the family plays into this episode.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Kevin?
Well, at first, I was a little uncomfortable with sort of the innuendo that family members may have been involved in some way.
Until they started telling us they were involved.
Yeah, I'd say Matthew brought the receipts on this,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do know that after he left, that he did wind up in Los Angeles at Kay Banks' house.
But the FBI showed up there too early to catch him.
Too early to catch him.
And they didn't stay around? What the fuck, FBI?
Busy FBI people.
Ugh. And by the way, did Kate know the FBI was there the first? That's what my question was this. Did she know?
I think she said that. I haven't seen him or whatever.
Right. But then he did come, and she
Yeah.
wasn't like, dude, you can't stay here because the FBI was just here. Like, what? That feels like there's a missing piece there to me.
I don't know. I didn't live it.
All right. Receipts about the family. Keep going.
Yeah, so, I mean, without saying it's this one or that one, innuendo is okay if you can back it up. Maybe then it's not innuendo. Maybe I'm not using the right term. But I think it's okay to sort of pose that question or definitely point towards the possibility of the unknown about that if you can demonstrate other things and other facts. And it isn't that the family knows, but it's definitely that the family is not cooperating
Right.
and won't help anybody find out.
Right. So I have a question for you, Kevin.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to answer this honestly, because I feel like my answer to this honestly would be different than my answer to this would be if I wanted to give the right answer. I'm giving
I turn you in. Next question.
No, like if you had a cousin who'd
Yeah.
committed a crime and everyone in your family knew he committed a crime, but you also like loved him and thought he was a good guy. Like, you do know we've reported so many stories
Yeah.
like this in our books. There is a conflict there, right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, that is natural, except that this guy's crime was pretty fucking bad.
But also, there's also the dynamic within the family.
Right.
The cousin that gives him up is not coming to Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Laura, do you just want to comment on Lester living in California under a fake name and becoming a mentor to this like young boy, Kay's son? Who apparently the whole family knows exactly what happened, but they're still super cool with him being a mentor to this child.
Yeah, I found that kind of like, I'm like, what are we like normalizing deviancy here? Like, what is going on with this family? But I think the part about that stuck with me, it just made me laugh, was at the end when they're like, hey, if he's listening to this podcast right now, like what would you say to him?
And if he was listening to this, if he was still alive in the unlikely event, and he was listening to this, what would you want him to hear you say?
What's up? Damn.
Hey, yeah, what's going on? And I'm like, seriously? So it's like, even after all this time, and now there's a podcast being made, and clearly you have more information, it's like it still doesn't register what this guy actually did to land himself in prison. You know what I mean? It was really bizarre.
Does anybody on this panel think that Lester Eubanks is still alive and out there?
Yes.
I'm on it could be.
I have the foggiest idea.
Yeah, me neither. I also, it's been a very long time. And I'm not sure. I mean, Toby sent a note about like, why now pursuing this? Like, what is the urgency? Like, have there been more crimes? What's going on? Like, what are we doing? Toby, that was one of your notes, right? Like, why this? Why now?
Yeah, it just seems like if he's been out for 45 years and, he hasn't come to the attention of law enforcement at all during that time, what's the urgency in finding him at this point? It would be nice, Like, I don't think you should just escape from prison and live the rest of your life. But in terms of priorities for what I assume is an overworked, he's Marshal Service or whatever. I just don't understand why this would be a priority that they would put this guy on full time.
Well, he's handling other cold cases, though.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought don't they say at one point that he was put on this one case full time?
Could be.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be somebody.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
My question would be like, why are you allocating this amount of resources to this one case? And then also, why does ABC think this is a particularly interesting case to follow? Because I think once you get past the sort of outrage that he walked away from a strip mall where he was unsupervised, I mean, at least for me, I didn't find the rest of it at all surprising or compelling or anything. It was just like, oh, and then this happened, and this person, and that person.
The one thing I did find surprising was when they revealed that they actually did have a record of him for a long period of time and that they hadn't been caught. Like, that to me is the interesting part, but I feel like that was buried. Like, so one of the episodes ends and it's like, I am, as a listener, thinking like, he's just in the wind. He's gone. The next episode begins and it's like, we have work records. He had a different name. He was whatever. Maybe that wasn't like clearly like done with the exposition, but it was surprising to me that he actually was living a whole new life and had a record of it. I kept thinking of, there were so many Shawshank Redemption episodes in this podcast because the prison where he escaped from was the prison where they filmed the Shawshank Redemption. And I just kept thinking of like Andy Dufresne and Red on that beach in Mexico. And like if they had gotten jobs and if they had identities and if they had whatever, like,
Did they check that beach?
No, they didn't check that beach. All right. Well, so why don't we do what we do and give our thumbs up or thumbs down review to this podcast. Have you seen this man? It always reminds me of the Terminator. Have you seen this boy? From ABC Audio. Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Do you think Crime Writers On listeners would like the show? Should they check it out? What do you think?
I'm going to say thumbs up. It wasn't my most favorite thing I ever listened to, but I'm going to say thumbs up because it's a good story in terms of how this guy got out. Episode 2, if you listen to nothing else, and you need some fuel for your rage walking, I would highly recommend that. I think the later episodes did for me sort of drag a little bit, but it's an interesting story. It's produced well. They have a lot of good sources. And like I said, rage walking episode 2.
What about you, Toby Ball? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Have You Seen This Man?
I honestly have a hard time with this one. And I was going to mention that I think the last episode that just dropped is about this painting that they think that he might have done. And they're like, will we be able to get fingerprints or DNA or whatever? Why does that even matter? Why are we spending all this time on this? Like, all you're going to know is that he was alive like 6 years ago. And how does that help anything? So that's kind of indicative of the whole thing to me. It was a little bit like, why are we spending time on this? So, I'm a thumb sideways in that it's not bad really, but I just didn't find it interesting. And there's so much other good stuff out there that I just can't imagine being like, oh, hey, you got to listen to this. But at the same time, it's well done. It checks off most of the boxes of things that we'd like to see in podcasts. I just don't think the story is very compelling, and they don't bring anything extra to it, I don't think.
This is a tough one for me. I am a thumb sideways as well. Only because I think that what they're trying to do with the podcast formatically is taking away from how good it could be. Like, okay, so if a newspaper in a small town had put out this podcast, I would be a thumbs up. This is ABC News. Like, we don't need the lady from The View introducing and doing the continuity for this podcast. They should just go in straight with this other dude and be like, you're reporting the story. This is your podcast. We'll just figure out how to do season 2 later. Introduce at the top saying we have a different reporter in a different case. I think that they are, like Toby said, it sounds like TV people made it. I hear a lot of that stuff, and I don't think that's necessary anymore. I also don't think it's forgivable anymore for an outlet like ABC to be making those kinds of errors in audio. So I'm giving it a thumb sideways because it should be a lot better. There's a lot of good stuff here. The story is very interesting. I do like the idea of following a U.S. Marshal investigation of a missing fugitive. Like, that's a cool idea. Like, that's the fugitive, right?
Yeah.
So I like the idea of it. I think a lot of it is really, really good. I would take out all the sunny parts, all the television formatic parts. That's what's making it thumb sideways for me. But that's about it for me. What about you, Kevin?
I am a thumbs up. I did like the way this was put together. I appreciate all the journalism that went into it, the amount of time crisscrossing the country. It is a case that is kind of frustrating about how this guy gets away and about how people who probably could help bring the guy back in are reluctant to do so. I do appreciate like these kind of inside the investigation kind of stuff as opposed to talking about it later, being embedded in the car when they're going to go do something. I think that makes them somewhat unique. I like the access, and I'm really interested to see if the podcast does result in a change in the case, because this is one of those kinds of podcasts where that could be. One of the places I would have been looking for the guy would be, of course, under the covers of my Brooklyn and sheets.
Oh, yeah.
Because once you hide there, you don't ever want to come out.
No, never.
Especially now that the weather is changing and it's cooler at night.
I have like the best Brooklyn story of all this week. Can we just like do it?
Sure.
You and I dragged you. I've been trying to drag you for months to go mattress shopping, like for our bed, right?
Yeah.
So we went to the mattress store and like let in all these mattresses. And they were like, don't you want to change the size of your bed? You have a queen. Don't you want a king now? And I was like, nope. Because we have all these queen Brooklyn and sheets and we are not giving them up. We are sticking with a queen because I cannot give up these sheets even if it meant 6 more inches of legroom. Right?
Absolutely.
I can't give them up.
Rebecca's Brooklyn and sheets are the most comfortable sheets that she's ever slept on.
We get
and
more
we will never get
about,
another size bed.
We get more emails about Brooklyn and sheets probably than any other sponsor, probably.
Hey, their towels are fantastic too. We can't recommend them anymore for friends, families, or treating yourself to the upgrade that you deserve. And now, Brooklinen.com is giving an exclusive offer. You get 10% off and free shipping when you use the promo code Crime Writers at Brooklinen.com.
And Brooklyn and sheets and towels, they will make an incredible holiday gift for people that you love, people that you want to have sleep better or get more fluffy dryness when they get out of the shower. They really do make an incredible gift. You can check them out and see all the gift options at Brooklinen.com.
Brooklinen is so confident in their product that all their sheets, comforters, and towels come with a lifetime warranty. And the only way to get 10% off and free shipping is to use the promo code Crime Writers at Brooklinen.com. BROOKLINEN.com. Promo code Crime Writers.
Crime Writers.
Brooklinen. These are the best sheets ever.
Ever. What else you got, Kevin?
Well, there would be no need to take prisoners to a Christmas shopping trip if they had Uncommon Goods back in the 1970s.
No kidding.
It took you decades to get here, but we're glad you're here now.
That's right. Many of my favorite items in our house are from Uncommon Goods.
That's right. Lester Eubanks could have shopped for all of his family.
That's right.
Getting fantastic things from the unique website Uncommon Goods. You know, I just recently, I'm getting ready to give gifts.
Yeah.
But I got a gift from a secret admirer, and it came from Uncommon Goods.
Secret admirer?
Yes, and it's right here.
Oh, that's a good gift.
Yeah, it's a jar.
It's a little cocktail jar.
Cocktail
with some
jar.
infusing spices and a straw.
Are you just going to step all over this?
No.
You're going to let me say my thing? It's my gift.
I'm concise.
With the metal straw. It's the aged and infused Parrot Head Strawberry Jalapeno Alcohol Infusion Kit. So there's instructions in here, and just...
There's a recipe.
It smells so good.
There's some aromatics to throw into your cocktail. And the egg even comes with the recipe and the vessel from which to drink your cocktail.
It's a very clever gift for a guy. In fact, I am going to get another one for it. I'm not giving mine to him. I'm not re-gifting at all.
No.
But I am going to get this one for my brother-in-law because he doesn't listen and I can say it. I'm getting him the Blue Sunday. Blueberry Lavender Alcohol Infusion Kit.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guy he is.
I got a gift from Uncommon Goods last year. Remember that beautiful decanter for boxed wine bags that comes from Uncommon Goods?
Yes.
They still have that on their site. I would recommend it. It is a beautiful like maple wood ball. You take the bag out of your wine box, put it in there, and it's like a beautiful decanter. It's amazing.
It's great gifts for just about everybody you know, unique things, and they donate $1 for every purchase to good causes like paid family leave and fair living wages.
Good for them.
Uncommon Goods wants to help you discover your new favorite thing, just like I did. They're offering our listeners an exclusive deal. On your first purchase, go to uncommongoods.com/crime to receive $5 off your first purchase. That's uncommongoods.com/crime to receive $5 off your first purchase.
Moving on. Netflix's Tell Me Who I Am documents one man's quest for answers about his life, answers his twin brother has refused to supply. Alex Lewis lost his memory in a motorcycle crash when he was just 18, and it was up to his twin brother Marcus to begin filling in the blanks about their family and their perhaps idyllic childhood.
I remember opening my eyes and looking around the room. I instantly recognised my twin brother, and I just said, "Hello, Marcus."
Taking advantage of his brother's amnesia, Marcus chooses to withhold critical information from their past, believing that revisiting their childhood would be too painful for the both of them.
I, from day one, painted a picture of a normal family, but none of that was true. It was a fantasy that I was creating for him. How could we have secrets? We don't have secrets. The one person that I absolutely trusted has betrayed me.
Alex insists on learning the whole story, however, and the film ends with the two sitting down to finally address the issues. Tell Me Who I Am poses tough questions about whether it's better to confront one's painful past or to remain blissfully ignorant of its destructive consequences. We are going to be talking about full-on spoilers from Tell Me Who I Am, so to avoid them, skip ahead to our thumbs up or thumbs down review. Laura Bricker, you sent me a note. This is the most bizarre story reviewed in some time. Tell me what you mean by that.
I don't even know where to start. Well, the last one I was trying to think of that was this sort of bonkers in terms of like a family dynamic that was like WTF, was Abducted in Plain Sight. So this one, though, it's like you've got the two brothers. One has amnesia. One doesn't have amnesia. And the one brother is really almost like playing the role of God in terms of dispensing information about their childhood, but you know something is off. It's just, the whole thing is nuts because it's like you've got this setting, like they keep panning to the outside, like the B-roll footage of like the creepy English cottage manor house where they all live with their mummy and her big tall self and all the other stuff that's going on. And there's just a lot of really weird details, and the family dynamics are just I don't even know. It's so crazy. Like I watched this and I kind of sat there afterwards like, alrighty then. I don't know about you guys, but it was just, I couldn't even digest it.
Yeah. Toby, you sent me the note that this starts very intriguingly and then gets super dark super quickly. But what do you think of the situation? I mean, coming at it from like a literary fiction writer perspective, the idea that Alex is totally dependent on Marcus to fill stuff in, and Marcus is spinning him this like idealized version of their childhood. What do you think about that, Toby?
I think it's great. You could write a ton of great thrillers with that as the premise. And I think that part of it is really interesting. It reminded me of a movie called Proof. I don't know if any of you guys saw it.
Gwyneth Paltrow in that?
Oh, I think that was another one called Proof. Maybe I'm getting the name wrong. Anyway, the one I'm talking about is about a woman who's blind who goes around to places and she takes pictures where she goes. But basically she gives the pictures to this person who then describes to her where she's been. And then he starts lying to her about some stuff that she gets in the pictures. So it's sort of similar in that way.
Except it's real.
Except that this is real. And the setup is really good. And I think they also do a pretty good job of misdirection at the beginning in a way that doesn't feel like it's cheating, in that while the mother's the real monster, the dad isn't a real prize either. And that's more apparent to Alex, who's the one with the amnesia, because at that point the whole thing with the mom is over as far as the sexual abuse goes. But the dad has got this furious temper and pounds on the table. They're not allowed to go places in the house. In the beginning, you think, oh, what fucked up thing is the dad doing? And that doesn't turn out to be I'm sure he's doing fucked up things, but it's nothing compared to the mom.
Fun fact, I did a little bit of research about this family after watching this documentary. The dad is not really the dad. He was the stepdad. Mm-hmm. And Alex and Marcus were not the only kids in this house. There was like at least one other sibling.
Two
other siblings? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on. It was
a half brother and half sister, I believe.
It was bananas. Kevin, there was a lot of suspense immediately in this documentary, right? The early suspense. I started watching this and I kind of thought, oh, this is like one of those things where you kind of didn't know where it was going to go, but they definitely did a good job setting up that something was wrong and off. But the one thing, can I just say that we didn't know as viewers? We didn't know that some of the suspense and drama would play out during the filming of this documentary.
True.
Right?
Yeah. See, I see this documentary more as a thinker and more as the kind of thing that you digest after it's over. And the things that you talk about aren't necessarily the ups and downs of the plot, but the question about what would you do if you were Marcus? Would you keep the secret and why? Would you tell him everything? Would you tell him half?
And why?
What are the consequences of this? And it opens up a larger discussion about what victimhood is. Not just who is a victim, but what does that mean? Does it mean that if you face the pain head on, and they say, go to therapy and work it out. What is that supposed to accomplish? That you get to a place where you are, I'm using loose terms here, quote, at peace.
Right.
Or you, quote, come to terms with it or whatever.
If you're not actually dealing with the pain because you don't remember it,
It's all actual ways to move past the pain.
Right.
And as if the pain never existed.
Right.
And in this case, is you're given a chance where the pain doesn't exist. It doesn't happen anywhere except on Law and Order and here. In this real life.
Homecoming.
Or in Homecoming. Okay.
That's what I kept thinking about the whole time we were watching. I'm like, this is the point of the Homecoming program. Make you forget your trauma so that we can get you to go back to battle, right?
Yeah, but it's just, that part of it is way more fascinating than, the way it's shot. And those are all good things to talk about, too. But the thing that we'll walk away mulling over is, did he make the right decision? And could he have kept it a secret the guy's entire life? Would that have been the best thing?
I will tip my hand. I think Marcus was trying to do something good here, right? I mean, I think we all agree they love each other.
Yeah.
We learn that they still work together, that they're very close, and I think that the intentions are all good. The question is, even with good intentions, can you navigate something like this? Laura, what do you think about this whole way they sort of portrayed the mother in particular, Mummy, with her giant hands and her giant feet and her closet full of sex toys and all the pictures of her partying?
Yeah.
And like the setting of this very creepy, very Jinx-like, like Victorian manor that they lived in. There's a lot going on there, right?
There was a lot going on. And I think what I liked about how this was all set up was, as you're learning about the family and as you're seeing pictures of Mummy, sort of you are learning at the same sort of speed that Alex first learned the details about his family and his mother and his stepfather and where he lives.
I never thought, this is odd, because everything was normal for me. It was perfectly normal to have parents like we did. It was perfectly normal to live in a shed. So I was never questioning anything, because what is normal, really? Normal is what you know, and normal is what your family is.
And so even though you know something's off, you're seeing how the family members are being portrayed, in particular the Mummy character. And in the beginning, they're like, well, she was great fun and she was always doing things and this and that. And you're like, but it still seemed a little strange. Like something just didn't feel quite right, even when they were describing her as having this great fun time and everything.
It was very V.C. Andrews. Honestly, I kept thinking about V.C. Andrews novels, Flowers in the Attic, My Sweet Audrina. It had that vibe. Toby, what do you think about the big questions this documentary is challenging the viewers to ask? What do you think those questions are?
Well, I think there's obviously, should Marcus have told Alex earlier? Should he have told him when he did tell him? How should that have played out? For me, similarly, if not even bigger question is, should Alex have pushed Marcus to reveal it? Because it was pretty clear the emotional toll it was taking on him.
So I started to ask Marcus about our childhood. He would say, what family holidays did we go on? And I'd say, we would go to France on a beach holiday. Oh, right. Was that nice? Oh, yeah, it was great. You know, we used to go to the beach. We'd have an ice cream. You always like to have a chocolate flake in your ice cream. Oh, right. That's nice.
And then for Alex, you know, in some ways, it's kind of like reading a book because it's not as though he's suffering from the trauma of it. It doesn't really, because he's forgotten it completely, it doesn't affect his life. So in some ways I was like, why can't he let that go? Why is he forcing his brother to do this? And it ends up being, you know, when it happens, he says, you know, now I have you back or whatever. And that all just seemed kind of strange to me. That seemed like the selfish act was his sort of being so relentless about that when the consequences to him seemed a lot less severe than the consequences to Marcus.
Don't you kind of get it though, Toby? Like if you know that you don't know the truth about yourself and that someone's keeping it from you just because they think you can't handle it, don't you kind of get it? Like you want to know? I mean, I kind of get it.
I would get it if that was actually the case, that he was trying to keep it from me because he didn't think I could handle it. I'm like, I can handle anything. But I think the reality was, and I think he was pretty open about it, is that Marcus couldn't handle bringing it back up. And so that was the emotionally trying part of it, was for him to have to dredge this thing up again, which he has sort of tamped down and spent a lot of emotional capital on, knowing that he's been lying to Alex all this time.
Why would you feel it's necessary to give an emotionally disturbed 18-year-old information that he can't handle and is not necessary for him to know? And if it was the other way around, I'd expect him to do the same. I would want him to do the same. I'd be angry if he hadn't done it. And I do feel very passionately about that.
So it just seemed to me that Alex at least should have been aware that this was what was going on. He should have been aware of the trauma that this was causing his brother. And in the end, what does it mean? You know, he doesn't remember it, whether he finds out or not. It's not like it's introducing trauma to him at this point. It's like, oh shit, that happened to me. That's fucked up. But it seemed like it was more something he needed his brother to do so he could have a good relationship with his brother, rather than anything about his sort of understanding himself better. At least that was my interpretation of it. And I kind of felt if he had been a little more compassionate, he might have realized the cost of his insisting on this and wondered if it was really worth it.
I wonder if it was worse for Alex to know half the story, because then he had just been driven all these other years by wanting to know the other half. And that ended up putting some additional pressure on Marcus. Because it's one thing to keep a secret when you don't know someone's keeping a secret. Alex had no reason to believe that Marcus was lying to him or protecting to him all those years.
But then he was able to figure it out. He did eventually know that there were secrets.
Once they found that creepy picture where they were naked and their heads were chopped off.
I started piecing things together. I started to realize that her whole life revolved around sex.
But then now Marcus is like, he's actively keeping a secret.
I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, he's withholding information. And, you know, I think that played with Alex's head. It's almost as if everything came out all at once, that the way that they would process it all would be different. Because now Marcus did his best to protect Alex from those memories. But at the point you couldn't protect him any longer. Everything was just all dirty anyways.
I guess my question is, though, even once he tells him the memories, like he's still got amnesia. So it's not like it's going to suddenly trigger some big like recognition and like moment of clarity and it's all going to come into place. So I think I'd have a hard time processing it still, because it would still seem like one step removed, because I still don't have that direct personal memory of the event. Does that make sense?
It feels to me like something, if somebody was like, oh, this happened to you when you were 1. Like when you were living here, this thing happened and you were 1. It's like, oh, huh. But it doesn't have any resonance with my life now. And I assume it would be the same way for Alex. And you can tell at the end, there's 2 brothers, one of whom is completely psychologically broken down, and the other of whom it's like, oh, well, now we're back together or whatever.
Toby, what do you think about the fact that they had the most fraught conversation they've ever had in their lives on camera for this documentary?
That is nuts. it's hard for me to put myself in their place because I just can't imagine wanting to do that. I'd be interested in reading more about the making of this thing, how they found these guys, how they negotiated this happening, why I guess their siblings or half siblings or whatever didn't participate. It seems like there's a meta story here that's probably pretty interesting, but it's a tough watch, man. It gets super, super, super dark. And I don't know. I kind of felt bad for Marcus because I felt like at all times he was trying to protect Alex. And I kind of felt like Alex didn't have the insight to understand the toll that it was taking on Marcus to do that and to appreciate it. I don't feel like he seems super resentful.
I don't think he has the capacity, Toby. I think part of him is still damaged from the brain injury.
And that totally could be. They don't talk about it like that, but I kind of felt like that was, at the end, I was kind of thinking if Alex had the same sort of level of compassion that Marcus did, like I think things would have been a little bit different. It's a compelling but tough watch.
All right. Well, there's a lot of conundrums here. I think we should do what we do and let our listeners know. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Should they check out Tell Me Who I Am on Netflix? A very unusual documentary. A tough watch, but certainly an interesting one and certainly quite true crime adjacent. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Tell Me Who I Am?
I'm going to go with thumbs up. It's a really unusual story. It's a really unusual situation that happened with these identical twin brothers. And the family background and sort of the mystery of the brother, in this case, who has amnesia, is told in a way that is very compelling, but it's very difficult to watch. So, I mean, I'm going to give it thumbs up, but I would say like it wasn't something that I really was like relishing watching because it was pretty depressing to listen to the backstory that went into this. But at the same time, it's a really unique story. So I'd say give it a watch.
What about you, Toby Ball? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Tell Me Who I Am on Netflix?
I think it's going to be sort of an unusual thumbs up, but I'm not sure if I would recommend it for people necessarily. I mean, I think it's good. It brings up some really interesting questions. But I think the caveat is that it is just really, really dark. And so unless you're ready for that, I wouldn't watch it. It's one of the darkest things I think we've reviewed. But if you feel like you're ready to take that on, the story is certainly interesting and there's certainly stuff to think about. So, yeah, take that for what it is.
Yeah, I'm giving it a thumbs up, too. I think that I like to think of this documentary as a standalone thing. Like, ignore the fact that there's a book, ignore the fact that there's other stuff. Just the documentary by itself, it's really gothic. Like, there's a very, like, strong, like, gothic feel to it. Very sort of V.C. Andrews, very sort of, like, reminding me a lot of, like, the old-timey British, Scottish Highlands, like, mysteries I love reading. Yeah, it's dark, but it's set up really well. It's beautifully made. The brothers are compelling. The reenactments are tasteful. And the way that they unspool the story is kind of fascinating. So I'm going to give a thumbs up to Tell Me Who I Am on Netflix. What about you, Kevin?
I'm also a thumbs up. I think that this is one of the more intriguing documentaries that we've looked at. When you get to the end of it, the story is dark, but not without as many twists and turns as you might expect. But the real takeaway here is the larger discussion about what it means to be a victim and about the decisions that particularly Marcus made to protect his brother. And I don't want to spoil anything again, but it's just the kind of thing that will really make you wonder about what is in the best interest of people, and if you're given a special opportunity where you could wipe away somebody's mind and take away their pain on something, if you would do that and what those consequences might be.
It's like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in that way.
It is.
But
it is.
Real. Yeah.
But real. And speaking of forgetting things, sometimes you just don't want to change the cat litter.
That's true. Sometimes you don't want to change a cat litter.
You just don't want to.
Or sometimes you forget.
You forget to buy new cat litter.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's where Pretty Litter comes in. They can deliver odorless litter right to your door. It's kitty litter reinvented. Unlike traditional litter, Pretty Litter's super light crystals trap odor and release moisture, resulting in dry, low-maintenance litter that doesn't smell Laura, right, it just clumps in a different way than a regular litter, right?
It doesn't clump traditionally. Like the pee doesn't really clump. You just stir it up and it kind of evaporates, and then you just scoop the poop. So it's a lot less scooping. So a lot less for me heading down back to dump the poop or whatever in the compost pile.
And remember that the litter will actually change color if there's an anomaly or a health issue with your cat, because it detects certain enzymes and special things that will give you a heads up before you go to the vet, or let you know that maybe your tabby needs to be attended to. You can't change the weather, but you can change your kitty litter. Make the switch today. Go to prettylitter.com and use promo code CRIME for 20% off your first order. That's prettylitter.com, promo code CRIME.
What else you got, Kevin?
I don't know. What do you have, Rebecca?
Well, too much screen time, Kevin, can result in tired, dry eyes, headaches, blurry vision, and trouble sleeping.
Tell me about it.
Listen, I look at screens all day. I'm looking at screens right now in the studio. I was working for 12 hours today before I got here. You know how I protect my eyes from all those screens?
Felix Gray glasses.
That's right. Felix Gray glasses filter out 90% of high-energy blue light and eliminate 99% of the harsh glare coming from screens. Unlike other brands who use cheap blue light coatings that are ineffective and can chip or scratch, Felix Gray uses a proprietary blue light technology that's embedded directly in the lenses. Available in prescription, non-prescription, and readers, Felix Gray has you covered with optical glasses for work and sleep glasses in the evening that are clinically proven to increase melatonin secretion when worn before bedtime. I gotta tell you, Kevin, that sounds pretty good to me. Those white light, blue light situations before bedtime are no good.
You can get them in prescription, too.
That's right. Yeah. Felix Gray makes the best blue light glasses in the game. Go to felixgrayglasses.com/crime and get a pair of blue light glasses from the pros. Shipping and returns are totally free. That's FELIXGRAY glasses.com/crime. FelixGrayGlasses.com/crime.
What else do I have, Rebecca?
What else do you have, Kevin?
The book The Suspect is a masterful true crime narrative of the 1996 Centennial Olympic Park bombing and the heroic security guard turned suspect at the heart of it all. A rich, character-driven narrative filled with themes and topics that are more relevant today than ever. It's a page-turner centered on the intertwined lives of Richard Jewell, the reporter who broke the story, and the FBI who made the case that wasn't. The Suspect reconstructs all the events leading up to, during, and after the Olympic bombing, from mountains of law enforcement evidence to the extensive personal records of key players, including Richard himself. This book is the culmination of more than 5 years of reporting, a gripping story of the rise of domestic terrorism in America and the advent of the 24/7 news cycle and an innocent man's fight to clear his name. It's being published ahead of a soon-to-be-released film, Richard Jewell, directed by Clint Eastwood and featuring an all-star cast. But the book is always better, right?
Totally.
As crime writers, we would say.
That's right.
The book is always better. The Suspect is available wherever books are sold and at thesuspectbook.com.
Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the crime
of the week.
Forget the dogs. Who let the cats out? The Friends for Life Animal Shelter in Houston has been dealing with a series of security breaches. A 6-year-old feline named Quilty has been getting out of his enclosure repeatedly. Officials say Quilty gets out several times a day, but it doesn't stop there. At night, Quilty is breaking out the rest of the cats too. Each morning, the staff has to wrangle all the loose kitties sprung by Quilty. The staff had no other choice but to put the top cat in solitary confinement. Boo. Quilty's antics have gone viral. The shelter's post got 16,000 shares, and they're now selling Quilty-themed merchandise. And the spate of breakouts may soon end because Quilty has spent the past week with a potential adopter.
Oh,
Yay!
That's nice.
So, panel,
Hope
here's
they
my
have padlocks.
Panel, here's my question for you. We believe the bad tabby had his own reasons for springing out all his friends. What was he really planning? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Clearly, they were planning a visit to my house to see me.
Probably. Toby Ball, why do you think this bad tabby was springing out all of his friends? What did he have planned?
Ladies' night at the Pretty Litter Factory.
What about you, Kevin? What do you think all these Quilty plans had in mind?
I think they were getting together to make a band like the Aristocats, and they needed 4 or 5 of them to climb up on the big stand-up bass.
I was going to say they were getting together to make the trailer for the worst-looking movie ever released, the movie version of Cats.
Looks like they already did that.
All right, we should probably end it on that note, but before we do, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
We don't have a cat. We have something that rhymes with cat called rat.
What?
Rat of the week?
A rat of the week. That's a first. We've been doing this show for like 5 years. We've never had a rat.
I know, but it was so good I had to do it. So it comes from Erin Lacey, who goes under the Twitter name Mom of Many, and sent a picture. I give you my entry for rat of the week. Rexy the rat shows no fear of Remy, who's a dog, despite Remy's repeated attempts to eat her. She actually hits the cage bars with her hands to attract
Is it a rat terrier?
Remy's attention. No, it looks like some sort of a lab cross, and doesn't back away at the teeth. Rexy is 100% badass.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, our Bricker folks want to reach out to you to figure out how they can send you their nominees for Cat of the Week or Dog of the Week or Rat of the Week for this segment of the show. How can they find you online?
At Laura Bricker.
And Toby Ball, folks want to reach out to you to say, hey, Toby Ball. How can they find you on Twitter?
At TobyBallNH.
Kevin Flynn, what are your deets?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On. And I encourage you to join the amazing community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. We also have a regular old Facebook page, but that's boring. Support the show on patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia, and you'll get the Crime Writers On After Show, a brand new episode of Married with Podcast, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, and Laura Bricker's amazing Leave It to Bricker podcast. Our theme song was performed by the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble and used with permission. Line editing for the show is done by the very handsome Henry Lavoie. And a very special welcome this week to a brand new member of our Partners in Crime Media team, longtime listener and social media pro, Meredith Plunkett, is helping us out on the socials with our newsletter and our marketing. Welcome, Meredith.
Yay.
You can subscribe to our newsletter at crimewriterson.com. This show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, formerly known as Studio C, the closet in our basement where Kevin also escapes when it's time to go Christmas shopping. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you
later.
Henry, it's okay to turn this into a usable thing that doesn't include my political opinions.
Yeah, no, it's all cool.
I like how we talk to future Henry now.
By the way, yes, communicating with Henry through this podcast. You know what he said? Do you know what Henry said to me last week?
What did Henry say?
When he finished editing the episode, he was like, that was a really good episode. And I was like, thanks, Henry. He's like, no, it was really good. Like, I like the way you talked about Watchmen. I really liked the part with Taylor. I really thought your analysis was really good. It's a really good episode. And I'm like, fuck you. Clearly, this is the second episode.
Don't listen to our podcast.
You're comparing this episode and calling it good because this is only the second one you've ever listened to.
The other one clearly sucked.
Anyway, do you have anything you would like to say to Henry while we're pre-recording here?
I don't know.
I hope your semester's going well.
Yeah.
Stick to your studies.
Don't get VD.
Partners in Crime Media. Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at discounttire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.